You all set?
Ready?
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again to Behind the Brand with Dave. This is Dave Shimoleski, and have a really neat guest with me here today. And if you're not familiar with Behind the Brand, if you're new to it, I talk with local business owners and people who work in business, and we talk about their brand and branding and advertising, what it means to them, and how it's kind of been with them throughout their career, I guess. So we have Peter Billard. Billard. We have Peter Billard with us today, photographer from Glastonbury, Connecticut. Very cool guy, and I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm thrilled that you agreed to sit and chat with me. It's very cool.
You're very welcome, David, and thank you for inviting me. Just 2 days ago when you invited me, I said, well, let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah, a little short notice, so thank you.
Go ahead and do it. Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you.
So we met a little while ago in our networking chambers and things like that, and we had coffee a couple years. It's been some time now, I think. And by the way, if you hear beeping and people, we're going to keep going.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that. So we sat down for coffee and we talked a little bit about our businesses and things, and it's always stuck with me. Some years ago, I'm going to have to say roughly 20 years ago, you made a decision. Because you were doing all sorts of photography, a lot of, I think, assignment type work, going on location, and the internet was kind of getting up and coming, and you had to kind of make a decision about where you're going to go, and that decision was to really focus on portrait work.
Yes.
So why don't you kind of walk us through that, sort of what led up to that? I think the decision has been a good one for you.
Yes.
So let's start there. Kind of lead us through sort of coming up to that point. What your decisions were there other ones besides that one, other options, and then the one you chose and how it's been going forward?
Well, I guess it was in about 1996 when I first began to realize that assignment work as I knew it and other photographers knew it in this area and probably around the country, we're going to see the assignment work pretty much evaporate due to stock imagery, royalty-free discs. And at the time, there was this, in the magazine, royalty-free stock photos on CD discs.
Wow.
And, it might only have like 100 images, but that was like people at work, people at leisure. And the rise of CD discs like that with stock photography meant that assignment work from, say, the clients in the Hartford area, the insurance companies and ad agencies, was just about going to dry up eventually, not immediately, but I sought to find a way to stay vibrant and relatable, and what could I shoot? And I thought of two things. One was shooting products, and the other was shooting people, but not just any old people. I wanted to photograph professional and business and corporate people exclusively, and leave weddings, babies, and newborns to other photographers that do those things very, very well.
Sure.
And I also thought that there wasn't enough being addressed to handle the needs of corporate clients, because they generally need things, turned around very promptly. They can't wait 2-3 weeks, like a regular studio would do. And it has been a very good decision. I'm very glad that I chose people, not products, because product shooting has succumbed to something very similar with the rise of Amazon and their requirements for photographs to be photographed in a certain way to be used on their site. Means
I didn't
that
realize that. So they have certain
shadowless, all white background.
Interesting.
Okay. No visible means of support.
So
beneath
it takes out a little bit of the artistic freedom.
Totally.
Yeah, all the artistic freedom, I guess. Yeah.
So it becomes very technical, and consequently, there's I've got a website that I saved from a place in Phoenix that in volume, can do product shots of things that you send to them for just $1 or $2, a couple dollars a piece in the large enough quantities. And so another photographer in Glastonbury that I know who does shoot products and always has and does an extremely good job of it has talked to me occasionally about how he's been undercut by a lot of other photographers that are doing it for less and less money. And So the reason that business and corporate portrait work was a good choice is that nobody's going to find a picture of themselves already on the internet.
Let's hope not.
Unlike stock photography, where we need those stock photos. I think a really good example of stock photography used really well is like for a dentist's website, where if you think about it, actual patients that come into the dental practice would not make good models at all because of their appearance and their teeth and so on and so forth. And that's why it's good to have real models and stock photos for something such as a dental practice. And so they have their use. And when we look at ads for vacation and tourism and things like that, it's nice to see those photos. And we can imagine that we would be on that beach and we would be that slender and tanned as well.
Would you do that type of work? Stock photos of people doing different things, or
no.
I don't go down that road at all.
No, I don't. Mainly because I think it's too speculative for me, for my taste. And I like the model that I've created and the brand that I've created, and by narrowing my focus to this one area has a number of benefits, one of which is that it allows me to present myself as an expert in this one area rather than a jack of all trades. I have a phone book here, Yellow Pages, big thick yellow page book from 1991 of Hartford, and in the back, Yellow Pages under photographers, there's one photographer that I've brought with me here in the book that is a wedding specialist, but then lists 12 other things that they do as well. Weddings and 12 other things, aerial and architecture and interiors and events and babies and boudoir.
They're all very different.
They're all unrelated.
They're all unrelated, and they require different skills, different mindsets. Because it's similar in the video industry, the different types of work, whether it be sort of a high-end corporate job or a wedding, or maybe something for a quick little job for YouTube or something like that. There's different mindsets you have to think, and different clients, and do you do? I'm not saying he's not doing a good job, but I think specializing in something like that, where that's what you do and you specialize that and you have that rapport with people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I could see the definite benefits in that.
I think maybe doctors, attorneys are somewhat similar, that they have specialties, that they learn, they study and they learn and they practice those things to a very high degree, and they get really good at it, so that if you had need for a brain surgeon, you wouldn't go to a GP.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
And so I think it...
interesting way of the interesting analogy, but it's very similar. Why wouldn't it be any different? Yeah, why would it be different? I mean, it's the same kind of thing. You're performing a service, a certain skill that you were trained to do, and you practice that skill. So why would you do everything under the sun and not concentrate on that one thing that you like and one that you're really good at?
Well, I think that jack of all trades approach is good in some sense for some people, but just not for me. I'm much happier being a specialist and doing this one area, and then do one area and do it really well.
Sure. Yeah.
And not dabble all over the place, like a patchwork quilt of things. And so it's worked out. In my case, I think it's worked out very favorable.
So tell us about your studio. You've been in the same building for I want to say since the 80s. Am I right?
1982.
Yeah, that's awesome. You don't hear about that anymore. So run us through, because I've been to your studio, and it's very studio. I love it. So
it's gotten better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you still had the dark room, I'm guessing, is good. Did you used to develop your own photographs, or did you send them out somewhere when you were shooting film?
Did both.
Okay.
I had a darkroom right from the scratch. When I first moved in there, had it built into the place, and but there'd be certain things that I would send out as well, so that it was, the black and white work. I would pretty much always do that myself in my own darkroom, And then if I had to get color prints done, I'd usually send that out because that was too much of an ordeal. But color transparencies, 35 millimeter slides, 120 and 4x5 and even 8x10, I would develop myself in many cases because that was controllable and it was very accurate.
Now, why would you use slides as opposed to print?
Usually it was whatever the job called for. That if, in the type of work that I did back in the beginning, before I narrowed it down to this current specialty, clients, ad agencies, most of the work that I did went into print, not displayed on the wall or anything. And printing presses, offset color printing presses, always wanted to have like a color transparency to work from that they could scan. Because it was like a first generation, whereas a color print is a second generation. It's made from the negative, so you don't want to scan a extra extra step there. And the color accuracy of color transparency film was generally, better than color prints.
What did you use, Kodak? Were you a Kodak guy or Fuji guy?
I used both.
Okay.
The Fuji Chrome was pretty good stuff. I'd use that occasionally in the 120 size, but most of the 35 millimeter and the 4x5 and the 8x10 would have been the Kodak film.
Okay. Because I had an old Minolta camera that I still have. I don't really use it much anymore. Matter of fact, one of the lenses on this video camera is a Sigma lens from that camera. Goes back. I got it at the end. It's great lens.
Good.
But I found that I liked. I mostly shot prints. I did some slides, just hobby stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kind of liked Fuji for some reason. It just kind of spoke to me a little bit better. So I always went with Fujifilm for whatever reason. I did personal preference, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like some people are Canon people and some are Nikon people and so forth.
I found that more. So working in news, I would see a lot of photographers for the different papers and publications. A lot of them were Nikon, and the folks that were shooting video and photos were more Canon. So I feel that I always like seeing a photographer with a Nikon camera for some reason. And I think you shoot with Nikon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why. I always saw that. Like a lot of the photographers out in the field, they all shot with Nikon.
Well, I'm glad that they both exist and the other brands as well because they keep each other very sharp.
Yeah.
If Canon comes out with something, that puts the pressure on the others to match it or do one better. Yeah. And so it keeps it very vibrant, that whole area of camera design. And interestingly, now that the iPhone has come out and is such a good camera, especially in handling lighting situations, mixed lighting situations, and exposure. And it does it with such ease that I think that's put a lot of pressure on the traditional camera companies.
How has that put pressure on you?
It makes me want to go out and buy an iPhone 11, but I can't afford it at the moment.
Yeah, not doing that. As far as, so people, they need a headshot. So have you had this, why would they go to a professional photographer? If somebody has a new iPhone, you just, find a nice background and that's your headshot. Why wouldn't somebody want to just do that instead of spending, the couple $100 to go to you?
I think it has to do with not just the device that you're using. It has a lot to do with the lighting. That lighting, as in your work, lighting is paramount. And that it can make or break a video or a photograph, and it has to be, well understood, and you have to have like a wide repertoire of lighting techniques, and it also helps to be a good people person, to have good people skills, to interact with people, and not everybody does. I mean, we think of that as, again, the doctor analogy is, that this doctor or that doctor has a good bedside manner, meaning that they take the time to work with you. They show empathy. They are concerned and they care about, the treatment or the performance of what they're about to do for you. And some photographers don't like photographing people. They're better off. they're happier photographing landscapes or dogs or
Right.
scenics
Right.
or things like that.
Which is fine, because, we need somebody to do everything.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So run us through, somebody comes to your studio for, a headshot, you standard headshot package. So what would they expect? Like, how does that time go?
Well, first of all, I'd have a few questions to ask them. How do you plan to use the photograph? Do you have any corporate guidelines that we need to know about or follow? And have you thought about what you want to wear? Because that can sometimes be overlooked. Not everybody remembers that, oh yeah, I've got to pick out something to wear that's going to be appropriate for the photograph.
It's they have to think into the future as well, because this headshot could be somewhere for years, right?
Hopefully not too many years.
Right,
Want
'cause you want
them
to
to come back.
My headshots, I went to your studio. Now, I love the photos you took. My hair was a lot longer then, so
Let's do it again.
let's do it again. Yeah. I think, yeah, long, yeah. I'm not going down that road again. It's too much work.
After just sort of asking a few basic questions and finding out, what their needs are, and I also like to feel out the person. Do they have any particular likes or dislikes that might be helpful to know about before we get in the thick of it? Because many people have had poor experiences, going back maybe as far as high school yearbook photography, and I seek to remove or replace those unpleasant experiences that they've had in the past with a good experience that they can use from that point going forward. And it's in my interest to make people look good and to satisfy them with good-looking photographs of themselves. And I want to make sure that I listen carefully to what their concerns are, chat with them a little bit ahead of time, listen and watch them as they talk to me when they first come in the studio, and as they stand in the light by the window and that type of thing. And just...
So do you, standing in the light by the window just prompted a question. So do you sort of kind of study them as you're talking to figure out how the light falls across their face or whatever, and how maybe what their best angle would be? Is that something that's kind of running through your mind as you're kind of prepping them and just getting to know them a little bit, those first few minutes?
There's a little bit of that, David, but also to see how their mindset is. Are they at ease, or are they uptight, about having this done? Are they antsy or jumpy, or are they very calm? Do they have any particular ideas they want to pursue? Or they might say, you're the professional, I'll just leave myself in your hands and do what you need to, Peter, that type of a thing. So
how does that go? How would you rather that, or would you rather? I'm guessing you'd rather more a collaborative experience as opposed to just do what you think is right.
I think it's necessary to have a collaborative enterprise like that, because if a person comes and they don't know what they want, it's like going out to a restaurant with a bunch of other people, and there may be somebody that just cannot decide what they want to order. They just cannot make up their mind about anything on the menu, and it takes forever.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have with the portrait plan. It's good to have something in mind that you want to accomplish, and yet we can pursue that certainly. But we also, with any kind of a plan to shoot something, whether it's video or still photos, you might plan it out like maybe 60% of the way, and then you leave the other 40% for accidental or unexpected or serendipitous things to occur, because you want to leave yourself open to those things. And when somebody comes to me for a photograph, we kind of like map out what we're going to do. Here's the sequence of things, and then we'll shoot a batch of shots, maybe 15, 20 shots, and then look at them together on the back of the camera to determine, what looks good on you. Are there things down here that we need to work
on the neck, right? Yeah.
or other things? And sometimes this looks better if it's this side of the face is into the light, and sometimes, this looks better. And then the side of the light, there's a lot of things that happen, and also the expressions that people bring to it. You can't make somebody, okay, now give me your smile.
Right.
It won't work.
Right.
So it has to be more
And
spontaneous.
I think that's where the people skills come in, just being able to have that just nice conversation or what have you, relationship with the person, so they sort of relax and smile naturally and not really force any emotion.
Yeah, very true.
I think that's important. Yeah.
Well, there was a time before I got into this in 1987. I looked it up, and I took a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client, and I took his photograph at his office in Rocky Hill, and Paul Dupuy.
Okay.
And he was a real serious fellow, and I was younger, and he got to a point where he said, "You're the photographer. Make me smile. Say something funny." And that made me realize that I did not have anything funny to say to him or tell him. It made me realize that what I had to do was I had to find a way to make people smile spontaneously.
Okay.
And the only solution that I came up with, and it's worked very well ever since, is silly little kids jokes.
Okay.
Because I can't tell jokes about ethnic or
Sure. Absolutely.
gender things, or a priest, a rabbi, and
everybody
a dog.
likes a kid's joke.
So they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're safe.
That's funny. Can we see that picture again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So that was back in when?
1987.
1987. Now, were you doing? So you were doing everything. You're doing portraits and that's a nice photograph. Yeah. So that's a nice. It's not a very serious. It's serious, but it's still relaxed and comfortable.
That was as much of a smile as I got out of him at the time.
It's not intimidating. It's a nice photograph. Yeah.
So that worked out well for him, and but from that point on, I started to find better ways of handling those types of situations where somebody might be a little reluctant, hesitant, or have not had a good experience before.
Sure.
And so it's worked out well.
What are some of the corporate requirements maybe that have not been? Have you any corporate requirements that may be too restricting of what you wanted to do? Have you come across that, and how did you overcome anything like that? Is that ever come across?
Well, it doesn't bother me that they have corporate guidelines and that it might be very restrictive, because I'm like in some senses, I'm like the hired gun, come in to, do a job and get it done. And why would I want to impose my creative solutions on their corporate guidelines? It's not my job to upend those corporate guidelines. And for instance, I used to photograph for an architectural firm in Simsbury that's no longer around, and they wanted everybody photographed in their own little nook and cranny and by a different window and different light to show their individuality. And there were maybe 50 people that I eventually photographed that way, and it worked out really well over the course of a number of visits to their offices. But then other clients, like law firms and accounting firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for instance, wanted their portraits to be all by similar treatment to show that they're all part of one big team.
Yeah,
that there's continuity.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind either fashion, whether to shoot each person in their own little environment or nook and cranny or lighting versus, the same setting and background that I brought with me, for the attorneys or the accountants, because they each have their place. And I'm more than free to do my own thing, when I shoot work of my own. I don't have to justify who I am as a photographer by imposing my preferences on clients. But if they ask for suggestions, I'm right there, with ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I need to listen first to what it is that they're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. You're a hired gun, right? And you're hired to do a job that works in their guidelines or in their taste.
Yeah,
Right.
very true.
And they saw your work and they like your taste, so they're hoping that both of you guys can sort of mesh and come exactly
Yeah.
with what you want. So I think that's great. So let's kind of talk about your brand a little bit. So how did that change back in 19? What was it? 90 when you made the, when you made the
96.
switch? 96. So what did you do to say, hey, I'm not doing architecture work and that kind of stuff anymore. I'm going to focus primarily on headshots. What did you do to get the word out?
Among photographers, that was one thing that I did, was that at the time, I crafted a letter. I think that was before email or after email or something. But what I did was I composed a letter to maybe a dozen or so photographers in the Hartford area that I knew well. And I announced this change in what I was doing, that I was only going to be shooting portraits for corporate accounts and business people, and that if I had calls for the types of work that I was no longer going to do, that I would consider, referring the client to them.
So you didn't weed it out. It was a clean break. Was it just a clean break?
It was a
wasn't
clean
like,
break.
well, I'm going to stop. I'm going to do a couple,
Yep.
maybe 2 a month. No, it was just you just stopped.
It was a clean break, and so there was kind of a vacuum for a while.
I could imagine.
It took a while for the new type of work to kick in, but I also made my own efforts to promote myself more heavily, in that one regard. One being, to really put together a new portfolio of images that pertain just to that style of work, and the other things, to set those aside.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And did you? How long do you still get? Well, do you still get calls for different types of work? Something that's not related to a portrait. I imagine you may.
Sometimes I do, and often that's because they haven't done their research to find out, what
Yeah.
I do in the first place. So that if somebody calls up and asks me to do a wedding, I know that they haven't looked around too much.
Yeah, your just name popped up and they didn't even research and they just called. Yeah, yeah.
But I have other photographers that I recommend. If somebody
course.
wants a wedding photographer, there are so many that are very, very good.
Yeah, of course. Now, you do a lot of social media, Instagram, Facebook and stuff. I see you mostly on Instagram, which is appropriate because, it's all about pictures on Instagram.
Yes.
And you do some running photographs with your son, right?
Yes.
How did that all come about? Starting to kind of do those and post those, and where do the ideas come from? Can you run me through that a little bit? Let's start at the beginning. So was it just like, hey, I'm running, I'm going to take a picture, or was it more of a planned out venture?
My son Jesse knew how much I enjoyed running and how long I'd been doing it, and he suggested an Instagram account that was just on running. So we started that back in 2016, and we did that for about 2 years. And then in 2018, I had all sorts of things with Lyme disease and some other things that kept me out of running for a while, and we did not resume it after that. But those photographs are still out there, and I just put a couple up the other day.
So you don't take those photos anymore?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Do you have plans to? Because I love them. I think they're terrific. I love looking at those. Do you have plans on redoing, doing more rather?
I think so.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I think so. But Jesse was a very good partner, for doing that because of his ability with the camera, using my camera and stuff like that. And we'd find all sorts of interesting places to go and to shoot, along Riverside Park in Hartford, one spring when it was flooded, and outdoors and on tracks and, city parks, town parks, and then just out in the woods on the road.
Yeah.
And, in a variety of different lighting situations and, when it's all wet and rainy.
Yeah.
And so it's been real good to do.
Yeah, they're terrific. What's the account? How can they find you on Instagram?
Catching the Stride.
Cool, Catching the Stride. Yeah, so check that out, folks. They're very, very cool photographs. I love looking at those when they pop up.
Thank you,
they're
David.
a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Is that Jesse's thing? Is he going after, following his dad's footsteps? What's he doing?
Jesse realized he was interested in doing video work. And however, he didn't think that it would be a good living, salary-wise and everything.
I could talk to him a little bit about that. About that. Oh, go ahead.
And in the beginning of 2018, he had an awakening where he decided that he was going to go to a boot camp, programming boot camp in Brooklyn,
Oh, wow.
New York. That's very intensive, like from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week, so you have no time for anything else, just about. And so that was for several months, 4 months in New York. He stayed with his cousin in Brooklyn, which was really nice, very generous. And then Jesse landed a really nice job working as a remote programmer for a Texas software company.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave him office space in my studio there in Glastonbury. So I moved my office out of where it was and into the old darkroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that became my office, and then he took over what had been mine before. And the company in Texas sent him a bundle of gear, equipment, computers and things that he could work with. And so that's turned out to be very good. And
Terrific. So he's
Yep.
so you guys you see him every day.
yes,
Oh, that's great. You charging him rent?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's good. I was thinking he would move to Texas because that'd be unfortunate. But that's good. I'm glad he's home with you, and
Yeah.
you guys are working. Not really together, but you're in the same space, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's very nice. Jesse did something really fun last year on my birthday. For my birthday in June of 2019, he bought me a ping pong table
Okay.
for the studio.
Yeah.
And it's like a medium-sized one, not a full-size one. And when I'm not shooting, we clear away the gear and the backgrounds and the lights and the tripods and stands and things, and we set up the ping pong table.
that's
and
great.
we leave it set up until I've got another job to do.
Yeah.
And so we take 5-minute breaks throughout the day, maybe 3 times a day.
Sure.
And on the wall in the studio, I've mounted one of my old darkroom timers. And it's got a big, like a 10, 12-inch face. It's black with luminous letters and a big hands and everything. And we set that for 5 minutes plus a little. And we play ping pong for 5 minutes. The buzzer goes off. We shut off the lights. We go back to work.
Who's the better ping pong player?
We're very evenly matched.
Good. Yeah.
Very evenly matched. And we have our own house rules, studio rules.
Okay. Studio rules.
Yeah.
Of course.
Just keep the ball moving.
Of course. Oh, that's great. So, I talked to a lot of people about what their brand is, as far as is it just their business? Is it them? Do you think about it when you wake up in the morning? Do you think about it when you're getting dressed in the morning? When you're going to meet people? Is it different? Are you gonna be different if you're gonna meet somebody? If you're not gonna meet somebody? So day to day, when you're out and about, just on the weekends, off the clock, so to speak. How does your branding? Is that sort of always with you in your head about representing yourself? Because in a sense, right, it's you. You're not a company.
Yes.
It's your it's your product. So is that with you all the time? About even when you're off the clock, thinking about your brand, so to speak.
Yes, I do. I do think about it quite a bit, and it's not oppressively thinking about it, but I think about it a lot as far as creative ideas of what more could I be doing, say, for my website. What new ideas can I shoot for, like, say, creative portraits? Because I pretty much have to initiate those on my own and then post them on the website or on Instagram in order to show that, it's not just always a blue background with a, a shirt and a tie and a, buttoned up like that. And so it has been very exciting to work with my web guy over the last 2.5 years or so to finesse the website, create a new website, and then we just launched a brand new website, new theme, new photos, new everything at the end of January.
I saw somebody, I was going through, I saw somebody familiar on your website. Yeah.
Oh, there are a lot of good-looking people on there, David.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and the brand is something that I think of because I'm it. I'm the only person. I don't hide behind a name, sort of like a generic name.
And what's the name of your business, I guess?
Peter Billard Photographer.
Right.
And
So not photography, photographer.
Photographer with an
Cool.
ER
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah.
And
Why, I'm sorry to interrupt, but why, because a lot of people are, Joe's photography and so-and-so's photography. Why did you go with Peter Billard Photographer?
I think it more identifies what I am, like Peter Billard Doctor or MD or Peter Billard Photographer. So I think of myself as a photographer, and I always have just about since I was about 17. So that Peter Billard Photography would seem more like J&B's Auto Service or something like that. But I like the sound of Peter Billard Photographer.
I like it too.
I've said it enough times, so I won't repeat it.
Yeah. We got it. Say it again.
Nope, can't make me. And I think that I need to subject myself to the same things that I do to my clients, by being in front of the camera, by not being squeamish in front of the camera, by being able to do good lighting in a variety of situations, and being able to handle different needs that people have, and to do it, in a forthright way, to do it with integrity, and to do it, with determination and responsibility, and I think that, I want to be the most dependable photographer that people can count on to get good results, to do good work. I think quality of character is paramount also, as well as lighting and, good results, is that you perform and you produce what you promise, that type of thing. I think that we all want good service, whether it's in a restaurant, we expect a good service. If it's on an airplane, we don't want things to go bad, and we don't want to hear excuses. We want it done right, and just do it right, do it good.
Yeah.
Make me look good.
How important is, I'm going to know the answer to this question, but how important is customer service to you? Is that right up there with doing a quality job, or is that just all the same thing?
I think customer service is very important. It's very important to, work out a schedule of and deadlines, and to be able to deliver the work, when it's promised, and no excuses. Again, they don't want to hear why it didn't work. They don't want to know that, the film got ruined in the processor type things, excuses like that. You make sure that those things don't happen. And, with digital, it's less likely. But if you don't do backups, and if you're just sloppy and careless, and you don't pay attention, when you don't pay attention, when you don't pay attention, things just naturally fall apart. Mm-hmm. They do, due to a lack of attention. And customer service is paying attention, and finding out what people need and what they want and what do they really want. And
listening, yeah. So you must have, you have a session with somebody, you must have your own favorites. How often is it that they pick your favorite photograph? I mean, because you send them the sheet, the proofs, and then they pick what they like, and then you do whatever you need to do to finalize the photograph and send it to them. Yep. So I know out of those, you must have, I really love that one. So have they come back and not picked that one? I mean, I'm sure, or have they picked that one? So is it, my question is, I don't know what that question is, but has there been a time, well, how about this one? Has there been a time where they pick a photograph that they like, your client, and you say that's great, but what about this one?
The way we usually handle that is that I look for some kind of signal, indication from them that they like a particular look, or, say for instance, how serious or how friendly or how smiling or how, unsmiling do they want to appear. And that all depends also on their personal preference and also the purpose of the photograph. And so I look for clues that they're telling me or not that, I really like these this way, Peter, but let's not shoot anymore, where I turn this way, because it makes something look, out of whack. And so when we look at the photographs on the back of the camera, say I did a batch of 15 to 20 shots, and we look at them in the back of the camera, it goes quickly, but then, that initial edit on the back of the camera is to eliminate ones, that are obviously no good, like a blinking. And then we'd go back and shoot a second batch or maybe a third batch and look at each of those. And then of the ones that we save, and we've kind of tweaked our shooting from batch to batch, then I make that proof sheet on the computer, and I make a proof sheet and then send that to them. And if there had been a favorite one at the time that we were looking at them on the back of the camera, I'll put like a little red dot or something like that. The red dot serves to be a reminder, but it doesn't obligate them that they've got to use that. And if they ask me, which ones do I think look good, I'll speak up. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to impose my particular likes and dislikes on them, because it's really their picture. Mm-hmm. And it's my endeavor, to provide them with a picture that they like and that they will continue to like, for the time that they use it.
Has anybody just asked you just pick one for me?
Yes, it's very rare.
Okay.
But when somebody gets the proof sheet, a day later in the email, I encourage them, just take your time, look at it, and then look at it again. And if you want to show it to anybody else and have them look at it, do so. And sometimes even look at it and then put it away and look at it tomorrow morning. Mm. And if you still like the same one, then that's it. But otherwise, start looking them over again.
Yeah, that's great. Have you done any photographs that maybe the person looks better not smiling than smiling, or maybe they feel they want something not smiling, so a little bit more serious? Do you just personally say, well, this person, maybe I should recommend maybe they don't smile as much? Has that type of scenario ever come up?
It does come up, and it sometimes has to do with their position, their title, their job title, or who they are. Sometimes I've had an attorney or two who doesn't want to look too friendly and smiling. They want to look like impenetrable. So they'll have a more serious look. And that's a personal preference. We may have done shots where they had a good smile and so forth, but that wasn't the one that they chose.
Makes sense.
And also, some people don't want to smile because they're conscious of their teeth. Other times, when people smile, some people, when they smile broadly, their eyes get down to little slits.
Yeah.
And I asked my family doctor about that one time, and he said, oh, well, there are all these, like 42 facial muscles, and they're all connected, so when this goes this way, these go that way.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But it's variable from person to person.
Right.
And so the smiling thing or the serious thing, I feel them out. I ask them about that, how much do you want to smile? And there have been times when the silly little kids' jokes are over the top for somebody, and they just crack up and they can't hold it in.
Yeah.
And so they're very sensitive to kids' jokes.
That is hysterical. That's terrific. I love it. How was your logo changed? Did you change your logo when you changed your the direction of your work?
No, I've had the logo for a very long time. I made that, I don't know, back in the late 80s or something like that, or maybe, I forget when it was. It was, I'd have to look that up, but I've had that same logo for a very, very long time, and I think it's worked out really well.
I think it's worked out great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it reproduces well in all different manners. It worked during darkroom and film days because I was able to make a Kodalift negative mask, to use for my contact sheets back at the time. and then it still works. I'm not tired of it. I'm very happy to have it.
It doesn't, I mean, so what is that? So back in the 80s, what is that, 30 years, 40? How long is that now? We don't have to say. But that's terrific. It's that timeless logo. Has anybody said maybe any web developers or graphic folks like you should really update it? If you get any kind of feedback like that, and what have you said?
Yes, there was one fellow that I photographed, and he thought that I should, revamp it and, get rid of it and do something different. But when I pressed him about it, he couldn't say what that ought to be. He was just saying it sort of as a generality, and so I never took his advice, of course. But I also thought that he was just on the spur of the moment he was making that statement, but he didn't have anything to follow up with, as far as any ideas that he had. And I probably would have thanked him in some fashion, but just not do anything about his idea.
Do people recognize you? Maybe you go to an event and you meet somebody. I don't know, maybe an after-hours type networking thing or what have you, or some sort of a meeting, and they don't recognize you at first. If you hand them a card though, and they see that logo, would they recognize? Have you ever had that come across? Because I'm sure that logo has been bounced around all over the place for all these years. Has that ever come up, and how does that feel? Like, oh, my logo's getting out there, somebody I've never met before, and they know who I am?
That has occurred a few times. I think, at the West Hartford Connections meeting, it has happened there in a couple of times when I've gone there. But the funny thing that I do about getting recognized is that sometimes people think that I look just like Sir Richard Branson.
Yeah, I see that.
And so that becomes just a brief topic of conversation, but it's kind of amuses me.
What's the when you do go to a networking event? What do you do? Do you sort of what's your style? How do you present yourself?
Well, I like to make something concise, something to the point, something with a message. I often bring a prop, which might be a photograph or something else, related to the act of the process of taking portraits, and I like to emphasize when I give my 30-second speech. I like to emphasize the benefit of what I bring and the experience and my handling of the whole area of shooting corporate portraits is that it's my job to make people look good. I'm their advocate. My camera and I are your best friend for the time that we're shooting.
Oh, that's great. And how does that work? So it's 30 seconds. It's concise. It's to the point. Not too much information, right? And then you say who you are, and that does networking work for you?
It has in the past, and it has taken a back seat in some ways to my efforts online with my website, with having many pages, with seeding the pages with keywords and phrases and search terms, and going after the search engine optimization and getting better results in Google searches, and to really pursue that so that I can appeal and be found by a much wider audience than I have in the past.
Do you pay for any kind of promotion within Google, or is it all sort of organic?
So far, it's organic.
That's great.
The paid Google ads might be in the future, but I don't think I want them to take the place of doing the basic foundational groundwork that good website design and good page design should consist of. So,
I agree.
And I've had a great guy that I work with for 2.5 years. We meet twice a month at my studio for an hour each, and I get out the sawhorses and the plywood sheet and set up my computer there, and we wrestle with things and tweak things, and we have a topic usually, or one or two topics beforehand, so that we can do this. And I've learned a lot about doing the design work, which I especially enjoy now more than ever, because just a little while ago, it all started to really click. I understood where to find stuff. It's, in doing WordPress is very much similar. The complexity of WordPress is very similar to the complexity of Photoshop. And and learning your way around it is very important. But because I'm a photographer, I'm always posting new material, more photographs. And I want to be able to do that myself and to position things and to rewrite headlines, and I write my own copy, text, because I think that I need to be able to use my own thinking and words in describing what it is I bring to people and what I offer and how I accomplish what I do.
You do a lot of, I guess there's some behind the scenes photographs, but the ones I'm thinking of more are you, the subject, and you do these fun, jumping in your studio or doing different things. Is that sort of a spur of the moment? Maybe you just had a session with somebody and you had an idea, or are these planned things that, I have to, create some content for Instagram, or is it a little bit of both?
I see it as something, as a counterpart to the normal portraits that I take, which are head and shoulder type shots. I do a lot of those. So I need something to complement that, for my own well-being.
You release.
And
I get it.
it's just so much fun having a studio. I mean,
Yeah.
I was excited about photography at 17, and I still am. And when things turned from film, chemicals, and darkrooms into digital and Photoshop and computers and scanners, I was thrilled. And it reinvigorated photography all over again, brand new.
So you were all on board from day one with digital.
I was always enthusiastic about it, but I waited a few years before getting my first digital camera, because in the beginning, that to get a decent one, it was like $28,000, something like that, and it, I wasn't going to spend that much. I was going to wait until they came down.
Did you make the move to working with photographs in Photoshop before you made the move to fully digital?
Yes, in that interim period, I did like a hybrid method where I'd still shoot film, get it developed, or I'd develop it, but then I also had 2 scanners, one for flat and one for transparency or negatives. And so I had the film scanned so that I could then work on those photographs in Photoshop on the computer and then make prints on an inkjet printer.
Oh, wow.
For people that needed prints.
So you did the prints yourself? You didn't send that out?
It was a mixture of some of both.
Okay.
Because for my own promotional displays, when I went to business expos and when I went to networking groups and Chamber of Commerce events and things like that, I'd have samples of my work. Why would a photographer not have samples of their work, is what I thought.
Sure, makes sense.
So I'd make these large collages and display boards and put them on 30 by 40 black foam board type things and use those to display. And so it was invaluable to be able to make my own prints, my collages of images.
And so I'm guessing there's a lot more freedom in digital as far as in the post-production part. Do you do a lot of touch-up work or altering or color correction or any of that kind of stuff, or you really try to shoot, you want it perfect right out of the camera, minimal work in post? How do you work?
The cameras nowadays are so doggone accurate that it's scary when people see a photograph right from the camera that's really, really large. So I've never, and I never will, use like an external monitor or computer screen or MacBook or something to show people their pictures, because it would be too scary. On the back of the camera, the pictures are this big, and so you don't see all the cracks and lines. And
I was hesitating. I don't know if I was going to ask you a question. Why don't you use a larger monitor? And that's the answer.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
And even on the proof sheet, it looks okay there because the proof sheet the images are somewhat smaller. But yes, I do a lot of Photoshop work. But generally, what I explain is that I take out stray hair and soften lines and any temporary blemishes. I take those things out in Photoshop, and then I give them JPEG images JPEG files as a final result. But I also do more than that, but I don't talk about it too much, because it might be too scary. Like slenderizing the neck or the face, and whitening the teeth, and a little bit on the eyes, and
Wow.
so there are things that are done, and oftentimes the outfit, on the back side of the button there'll be like a little white thread.
Yeah. Get rid of that.
Take that out, and sometimes collar things need to be fixed.
What did you do prior to Photoshop?
You couldn't. You really couldn't.
You didn't do anything.
Hair would be sticking up, and that's just everybody accepted it.
Wow, so that's great that you had that opportunity to do that. So not just hairs, it's all. So you're not transforming a person, because that wouldn't be right. You just did a little cleanup, a little touch-up work.
That's a good way to describe it, David, because the other full-on approach is, the cosmetics and hair product ads in women's magazines, where the full page is of the model, and maybe they spend a day or two doing retouch work. And in that place, it's appropriate because they're selling a product, a cosmetic or a hair care product, but they're not selling that person. Whereas the people that I photograph, they need to look like who they really are, so that when somebody looks up their portrait, their profile shot on LinkedIn, say, and then they meet that person a day or two later, that they're going to look the same.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You need them to look the same.
But
Yeah.
what I do with Photoshop, that light touch-up, is analogous to somebody doing makeup in the morning before they leave the breakfast table and go out into the workplace, or where they use makeup, because everybody wants to look good. Nobody wants to look bad, and embarrass themselves.
No, most people, I think, yeah.
So the Photoshop is somewhat equivalent to makeup.
Do you have women bringing up makeup? Do you have men, I guess, but I would think mostly women. Do you ever have somebody change their makeup during a session? Maybe they want a different look?
Not drastically.
Okay.
But the change of lipstick is one thing. They see the photographs, the first batch on the back of the camera, and they realize, oh, I think I want a little bit more. Or they want to do a little, excuse me?
Yes.
They want to do a little, treatment around the eyes, say, for instance.
Okay.
And so, sometimes there's a little bit of that done.
Do you ever use powder or anything like that on men if they're too shiny? Or is that ever been an issue with you? Maybe if it's a humid summer day or something like that, and they come in a little sweaty, is there any powder or touch-up work you do with them before you photograph?
I'd rather not touch people's faces.
Okay.
I just think it's such an intrusion, and if they wanted to do it, that'd be fine. But one common thing is the forehead often shows a little bit of glare, and that's from my main light, and it's variable because of different amounts of skin oil that people have from person to person. And one of the easiest ways to take care of that is in Photoshop after the fact.
Oh, okay. So okay, interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's less intrusive to the person, and I'm not going in there at them, because it's not right to touch people without their approval.
So unfortunately, in my line of work, I do add a lot of powder to a lot of people. It's don't have that luxury of Photoshop of pulling that stuff. It's possible, but since it's moving pictures, there's many frames
Yes.
that we'd have to retouch. So we have to do it, before we take the video. Yeah. So I do a lot of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but some people don't need any. Sometimes they just need a blot with a paper towel or a tissue, and we're ready to go. So it is. I like telling this story. This gentleman a while back wanted to do some videos for his website. It would be him talking to his camera, sort of introducing who he is and what he's doing. And it was, again, hot. It was August, humid. He comes in, and we set him up, kind of checking out the shots. And there was just everywhere. It was glare, forehead, in his under his eyes, cheekbones, everything. So I said, hey, I got to put a little powder on you. So we powdered him up. We used quite an amount. Okay. And it was just his skin too. He just had that type of skin. And the difference, I use it when I'm talking with clients and maybe doing a workshop or something about what you can do to kind of look your best. And the results were amazing, the before and after. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I didn't know you could do it to that extent in Photoshop. Really, if there's a hot spot here on the forehead, you can clean that up that much in Photoshop without a problem.
It's done very subtly and, in like steps of like 10% or 20% at a time, so that, if there's a hot spot somewhere here and it's darker around that, then it's very easy to clone that tone of slightly darker skin from here and have it feather it over here. And sometimes
So do you use just the color, or is it like a copy and paste of the?
it can be either one, and sometimes one works better than the other. Just have to be careful not to clone lines, actual features. That's why it's good to move it around. And being only 10 or 20% opacity means that you're not doing a literal rubber stamp duplication from anywhere else. And it's pretty much undetectable.
Yeah. Obviously, you've gotten better over the years. Have you taken classes on photo? Is it just sort of learn at your own pace and discover new things? Do you go to workshops for Photoshop, that kind of thing? Any online tutorials, or do you sort of say, "Oh, I have to do this. How is that done?" And then you trial and error, and has your technique changed throughout the years?
Technique has changed throughout the years. I've gotten better when I look at something that I did, like, say, 10 years ago, and I say, ooh, whoa, I can do better than that. So I might, if I'm going to use it for my own promotion, then I might redo it a little bit, because I'll see things that I didn't know 10 years ago. How I learned Photoshop was probably, in the beginning, I had other people explaining things to me, showing me things. One other photographer helped me in the beginning, and then online tutorials, and then nowadays it's, like 90% of it I learn on my own by doing things, but I also stay aware of things and articles online that talk about different techniques. Sometimes if I'm having a dilemma with something, I'll do a Google search or go to Adobe's user forums and first of all look for a similar situation that I'm facing, see if it's already been answered, and then if not, then pose the question and see what I get back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out well, and other times it's like laying a goose egg.
Yeah, internet's great, right? And it's terrific for that kind of thing. Yeah, Photoshop. I mean, I use it even video. I use Photoshop all the time. I think it's a terrific tool, but I'm not I'm sure yeah, there's so many things that I don't know how to use or don't even know exist on Photoshop. So this has been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed our time together. Why don't you give us some information how people can contact you if they'd like to reach out to you? And I recommend if you need a headshot, anything like that, please give Peter a call or email or text or however he gets his information. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what your info is?
Thank you, David. People can find me via my website is a good place to start because they might like to look at the information that's there and the samples that are there. So it would be peterbillardphoto.com would be a good place to start. And after that, I can be reached by phone, text, and email, and people can knock on my door, and I'll answer the door.
That's great. And you're in Glastonbury.
Glastonbury, yep. I've been there since 1982.
Do you want to give your phone number, or just how you want people to go to the site? Either way.
860-633-6300.
I mean, why not? Maybe they got their phone there and they'll give you a call. So that's awesome. So this has been amazing. I'm really happy that you agreed to come and chat with me. Maybe we'll have another session.
You're a good man, David. I appreciate the chance.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Again, this has been Behind the Brand with Dave, and I'm Dave Shemaleski, your host. And please tune in for the next one, which would be these posts every Monday morning. You can find us on YouTube and also on Spotify and Anchor.fm. Thanks very much, everybody. See you later.